Okay, so I mentioned in the previous video about adding additional elements to this project. So in this one, we're going to add another object that you need to find, but it'll be an optional object. So if you notice down here, I've added some images of a cat meowing. What we're going to do is we're going to show you how to create an animated object, and then that you'll be able to collect them before you leave. So let's go to Game Object, Create Empty. Let's rename this cat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do Add Component, Rendering, Sprite Renderer, and we're just going to take the first image and put it there. That way we can see the object. That makes easier for positioning. Technically, that image won't be displayed because of the sprite renderer. It's going to be displayed because of the animation, because that frame will also be in the animation. So let's do that now. So let's go to the Animation tab, and it says to begin animating cat, so you know it's going to put it on the right object. Click on Create. You now have to name the animation. So let's just call this idle, because it's the idle cat. Now let's call it idle cat, just in case we put in any other idle animations. And now what you can do is you can just highlight all those images. Then you just drag and drop it all at once up here. Now you can see the sample rate is 60. We don't need it to be 60 frames per second. We'll try something like 14. It's not really that important as far as the exact frame rate for a simple project like this. But I do want to bring up the concept of looping. So what happens is the cat meows, so their mouth opens. Now you want the mouth to close again. So what you do is you could just put these images back in reverse order. So they play out in this order, but then you want them to play back. So you just do exactly that. You just drag and drop them up here in reverse order. If you need more space, you can slide the slider over, or using the scroll wheel, you could just scroll in or out to reduce the amount of space. That doesn't change the frame rate, that just changes the spacing on the screen. Okay, so now we're just going to leave it right there so you can see how that looks. So you've got a meowing cat and a really, really big cat. So let's shrink that a bit. So we'll just go to scale and we'll make that like 0.6, and Y will also be 0.6. That's better. Now let's take the cat and let's move it, say, to this dead end here. Add component. Whoops, sorry. It needs to be physics 2D since this is the 2D environment. And we'll just do a box collider, and you can see a green rectangle appeared. Again, it's a simple game, so we don't have to worry about having the collision be exact. We don't want it to be too unforgiving. And now what we want to do is we want to make that a trigger. So let's see what scripts we have at this point. We have a barrier script, we have an exit control, we have an items, we have move maze. Let's open up items and see if that's a good place to control the cat. Zoom in a bit. So let's see. Yep, it looks like this script is attached to specifically the key. So what we can do is we can use this same script. And what we'll do is it's also a trigger, so we don't have to carve out a new section there. We just create another if. So if other dot name equals shin, and you'll see why I'm retyping the same thing in a moment. So in this case, if shin is colliding with the object, we want something else to happen. So we still want to destroy game object because we don't need the cat to be on the screen anymore since you've picked them up. We're probably going to want to track the fact that you have the cat. So it looks like the other variable for tracking your inventory was created in move maze. So we'll go to move maze and we'll create another public static string have cat equals n. Now it's been asked, why don't I use a Boolean for this? Why do I use a string? Because Booleans by nature are yes or no. So it's a binary status. The reason for that is very often I think I need a binary status, and then it turns out I actually need a third or a fourth state. So out of habit, I just use strings instead of Booleans. Okay, so we created a new string. Let's save that. We'll go back to items. And now what we're going to do is we'll track that. So move maze dot have cat equals y. So again, you can see we're really not adding new functionality. We're repeating an idea that was done before. And that is that we have a variable to track whether or not we have an object. We put the object in the scene, has a collider box. If a collision occurs, it gets destroyed. So really the same idea is just being done over and over again. The visual may be different, but the functionality is very similar. Okay, so why do I have two if statements that are identical? That's because we're going to change them. So right now, this script is only looking to see the name of the object that is colliding. What we're now going to do is, since this script is going to be attached to multiple objects, we now want to check the name of the object the script is attached to as well. So we're checking both collisions now. We're not just checking the other object that is colliding. We're checking to see what object is that object colliding with. So up to this point, we've just been checking the other. Now we want to check the name of the object that the script is attached to as well, because now it's going to be attached to multiple objects. But the problem with using an object's name is that, particularly in larger projects, you may have 10 or 20 different objects that have different names, but the effect is the same when there's a collision with them. So you really shouldn't have to check for 20 different names. You could instead create what's known as a tag, attach the same tag to those 20 different objects, and rather than checking for 20 different names, it'd be checking for just one tag. So like, for instance, maybe there's 20 different enemies, they all do the same damage, so the tag would be small damage, and if the collision is with an object that has a tag of small damage, it does a certain amount of damage. So in a project like this, it doesn't make a big difference, but I just want to let you know that functionality is out there. Not to mention that sometimes Unity is a little weird when it comes to objects attached to parent objects. Sometimes it's a little bit weird when it comes to the naming of the collision, what it detects the collision with, but that's a separate discussion. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause here, and we're going to go back out. We're going to click on our key, and we're going to create a tag for it. So we're going to go to tag, add tag, plus, and we'll just call this key item. Now, what could happen is maybe in another dungeon you see a crystal ball and you have to put it on a pedestal or whatever. It's still functioning like a key. So again, rather than have to check for an object called crystal ball, you could just check this tag. You can use that same tag, and I'll show you that in a second. So we'll click away. We'll go back to the key. We go to tag, and now you have the ability to add that tag. So we'll choose key item. So we go back to our script, and game object dot tag as opposed to name equals key item. Oops. So if the collision is with the object named Shin, and the tag of the object this script is attached to is key item, and we did come up here to the key and attach that tag, then all this same functionality should still work. So we've added an additional check now. And again, the reason why we're doing that is that way we can use the same script on multiple objects. We could just create another script, but now we're trying to be a little bit more concise as it gets a little bit more complex. And there we go. Functionality did not change. So that allows us to what we really want to do. And that is we're going to create a tag. And now that we walk through this, I'll do this ahead of time. So game object dot tag equals, and we'll call this maybe pet item, because maybe in another dungeon it'll be a dog, in another dungeon it's a goldfish, whatever. So rather than, again, having to check for each and every object name, you could just use this one tag. So save. Go to cat, add tag, plus, we said this would be pet item. Go back to our cat, go back to the tag, and there's pet item. Okay, so almost done. So if other name is Shin, and oops, doesn't look, oh, I didn't put in the other parenthesis, sorry. Go remember that if you're checking just one object, it's surrounded by parentheses. If you're checking two objects, each one is surrounded by parentheses, and then the whole thing is surrounded by parentheses. So got to keep that in mind. The entire set of what you're checking for all has to be within parentheses. So yeah, as this gets more complicated, you tend to have more and more of these. Okay, so if the other name is Shin, and the game object tag is pet item, have cat get set to yes, and destroy, and it destroys the game object. So we will do that, but maybe we'll create a second inventory spot for the cat as well. So let's see where my colliders are, if I can just get up there. Okay, so we made a mistake. The cat was not there. The reason for it is the cat needs to be attached to the maze. Remember, since it's not the character that's moving, it's the maze that is moving. So everything has to move in time with the maze. Also, now that I think about it, we did not put the item script that we've been working on the cat. So we put in all the coding, we just didn't actually drag and drop the script onto the cat item, the cat object. So now that we've done that, it should work. Excellent. And now what we're going to do is just to finish basically what's a repetition of what we did last time, we're going to create a new inventory slot and a duplicate. So just as this slot is for this key and this duplicate goes into the slot, we're going to do the same thing. So let's take the cat, copy, paste, move it into, make it a child to the main camera. On that object, we're going to remove the box collider and the script because they don't need to be there. We can leave the animation so that way the cat is animated in the inventory. We go to our cat on the screen, and since this script has a non-static variable, this is actually unique for each and every instance of this script. So if this script is on 20 objects, there's actually 20 different variables. They have the same name, but you can actually assign different variables. So for something like this, it works perfectly. We can just use that functionality without reinventing the wheel. So what we do is we take the cat from the main camera, and it's the inventory key, just as the key from the main camera, okay, is in that variable. Let's move this cat out of the way. We now duplicate the cursor, slide that over a little bit, and now, just as we really repeated these two lines of code, it's a different variable, but it's the same idea. We're also going to repeat this. And we're just going to move it over. As I said, we don't have to change the name of the variable because this variable has a different linkage on the cat object. So I think that's it. So I went through that kind of quick, but like I said, we're not reinventing the wheel. It's really the same functionality as the last tutorial. And there we go. The cat's up there. The key's up there. And then we should be able to leave. So what I think I'm going to do in the next video is I think the next video will be the final one unless there's any other requests. And in that final video, what I'm going to do is I'll add a new scene where there's a menu option and a difficult selector, and the difficulty will determine if you need a key and if there's an extra object to find, and maybe we'll also add a timer. The timer is really easy, doesn't require a whole tutorial. And there we go. Everything works, and we've successfully made the addition to the puzzle game, so that should do it.